Welcome to Leadership Unlocked, where we uncover the pivotal stories that shape extraordinary leaders. I'm Dusty Holcomb, and on this show, we don't just talk about leadership, we decode it. In every episode, we sit down with change makers who've walked through the fire, challenged the status quo, and emerged with wisdom worth sharing. These aren't just lessons, they're lived experiences, real moments that reveal the mindset, resilience, and clarity behind creating lasting impact. Today, you are going to hear one of those stories. Alan McLaren has been called many things: CEO, entrepreneur, marketer, but his favorite title just might be Chief Squirrel Tamer. Yes, Squirrel Tamer. He's led public companies, built and sold ventures, co-founded organizations, and in the last 2 years has been deeply focused on coaching CEOs to understand that everything they do is leadership. An avid golfer, yogi, and former international chair of YPO Gold, Alan knows that branding isn't vanity, it's strategy. If you've ever wondered how the world's top leaders cut through the noise and stand out, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. This is Leadership Unlocked. Alan, I am so delighted that you carved out a little bit of your precious time to meet with us today. And as we get into this, I'm so excited to learn from you, to learn from your journey. But first off, I have to ask, is the official title Squirrel Tamer, or did you earn that through some traumatic experience for the squirrel that we need to know about?
Well, I think I earned the title, and it is the most important thing. When they put me in a box at the end of my life, they're going to say you were a Squirrel Tamer. Why? A couple of things. First of all, my business partner of 25 years, Leanne, is a full-on ADHD human being. So if you've ever worked with ADHD, and then you'll know that the squirrels show up every 30 seconds, so you got to pull them back. And of course, in my work, working with CEOs, fellow YPOers, a lot of them have a little bit of attention deficit. So trying to get them aligned is where that comes in. And I love it because I try to do it with love, but I got to get them back on track. But that's where the title came from.
I love it. Well, I can't wait to get into this and unpack some of your experiences. We both share a common love of YPO and belong to YPO. And you could not be more accurate. Like, the squirrel taming is definitely, and I'm certainly one of those squirrel minds where, there's 100 good ideas coming out all the time, and you just have to, you need people like you who can actually rein in people like me and other YPOers who are, we're always out there, thinking about the new thing. And, sometimes that can be a real distraction. So thank you again for giving us some of your time. Well, if you would, let's just get started with tell us a little bit about you and your journey to become the masterful squirrel tamer that you are today.
Well, what's interesting, I started down the sales side of the house. So, and I worked at Canon and Icon over a 16-year period where I grew from, selling, and remember, this is going to age me, but selling photocopiers up and down the street. And you want to talk about learning leadership early. When you hate rejection, and this was, in the 80s, and you have to put a photocopier in your car, and at the end of the day, it can't be there anymore, you got to sell it. You learn what leadership's all about, and you learn about what survival's all about. But I started there, and those lessons I carry with me today. So started in sales, and then, sales supervisor, sales management, sales training, and then got into some executive management at Icon. My first president's job in '99 at Icon, where I was in my home province of Quebec in Canada, and I took over a really rough thing, which we can get into, where the business was generating $30 million in revenue and had almost $9 million in losses. So and had a union showing, and had a union knocking at our door. So then, once I moved out of that role, I moved into IT security, which was another go from the frying pan to the fire, publicly listed company. And then that's where I met my business partner, Leanne. And then we did another business, and then had 20 years in marketing. And now, as you know, we're in the leadership branding business today. So that's kind of my 35 years in 3 minutes.
It's a pretty packed 3 minutes, and I can't wait to double click on some of these things and go deeper. There's some richness there. And, maybe I'll start with one of those unpacks before I circle back on something else. But one of the things that you said that I picked up on that I didn't necessarily think about before is you said that you learn a lot about leadership when you're selling. And so unpack that for me a little bit, because often people think of sales and leadership as two different things. Of course, there's sales leadership, but the way you specifically said that makes me think there's a lesson in here there for us.
Leadership is a lonely job, as we all know. And that's why it feels so good for all of us. But sales is a lonely job too, because you are measured by your performance. And so I remember moments as a young man, with a young baby who, arguably was a bit of an extrovert, but, going to knock on a door of, you don't know what's on the other side of that door way back when. I remember sitting in my car and having to pump myself up to go into that building to be yelled at 9 times out of 10. And so when you overcome that and recognize the greater good is I need to survive and I need to pay for my family, there's a leadership lesson in resilience there. There's a leadership lesson in setting goals and hitting them. And when you can fight through that, which I did for, I guess, a better part of a year, there were 25 sales reps on that team, and I had to be 1 or 2 all the time to be able to make a living. And so if you want to talk about a lesson when people say, oh, sales is tough. Yeah, well, try what I did and what, thousands of other people did in those days. And then that lesson carries you through today when someone gives you, lip about something. You have perspectives that others don't. So that's what the leadership lesson is for me.
That's super cool, and you're touching on some things that I have like very firm kind of bedrock principled belief in. Number one, the tenets of leadership of others are grounded in leading yourself first. And so when you talk about, hey, you need to steel your resolve to go get out there after the day, you're talking about leading yourself. You're talking about setting a standard of yourself and for yourself that you honoring that commitment to go execute. So, that's a first principle belief for me around what leadership really is the ability to lead yourself first. So I love that was that's a bedrock lesson. That's so cool.
The other thing that's really interesting that I learned early on in my career is when you perform, you are automatically seen differently, aren't you? You're in a category. So your head rises above the rest. So when opportunities come up, the first people they look at are the performers. Now, if you're a performer and you're not a nice person or you're not good with people, then those opportunities don't show up. But if you have all those other attributes, performance is kind of that bedrock, to your point. And if you can lead yourself, then you have a chance to lead others because you have credibility. So if you're going to leave that team at some point, they got to go, well, Alan was pretty helpful. He was a good guy. He did his thing. So all of those lessons, I think, are lessons for people in corporations or day-to-day living as an entrepreneur. Performance matters and managing yourself matters. So I think you're right, Dusty.
Well, it's so interesting there. You talk about performance. How do you ensure that you capture and convey authenticity in your performance? Because it's not like you're pretending to be someone you aren't. But you are very actively understanding that you are creating a perception, which is, again, everything we do as leaders is leadership. Every example, it's all performance. How do you connect that and maintain authenticity, or how do you guide others to make sure that they are being authentic to themselves?
So today I work with leaders all the time. I just tell people, just be the same human you are. So for example, you and I are chatting today. If we were in person at a ball game, we would have the same conversation. Mm-hmm. And so whether you're in sales or whether you're leading a church, a synagogue, or a mosque, or you're on your baseball team, be the same human. The only difference that I see in leadership is the authority you now carry when you're the leader or the CEO. That changes it a little bit, but it doesn't mean you can't be kind. It doesn't mean you can't be the same human being. Like I'm the same with if my wife was sitting here and I'm the same guy. But now in my business, I have the authority to go, well, it didn't do what we said we're going to do. So I'm going to turn on the little authority meter for a moment. And that's the difference. I think but leadership's leadership. I think leading in your life, not just in your business, is what I call authentic leadership, is really being you all the time. I'm a heart-centered leader, and I'm that way with everything I do. Until I don't have to be a heart-centered leader, then I turn that on. And people call that Bad Alan in our jokes. Bad Alan's coming up, and Bad Alan says, this is the 4th time we talked about this. Enough. Yes. We got to, but if you have that credibility and they know you're coming from a good place and you care about them, that goes over pretty easy. It becomes kind of fun.
That's such rich advice, because I think people really do struggle with trying to disassociate the needs of a role and who they are. And what you're saying is be yourself, understand that the demands of the role will cause you to have to, at times, wear a different costume, but you're still the same human being inside. You're going to still lead with, a heart-centered firstness. And I have to imagine, and I won't speak for you, but I can speak for myself, that heart-centered leader, which I am as well, never goes. And so when you do have to have the fierce conversation, the bad Alan or bad Dusty, you're still leading with that same heart-centered approach. You're still caring about the other human being. But we may be making tough decisions that person hasn't made the choices that they have committed to making and demonstrated through their behavior that they want to do whatever it is that they're asked or they're able to do. And so we have to be very forthright in our role, because our role has requirements and demands on ourselves. Otherwise, we aren't being successful for all the other people that we're charged with taking care of.
Dusty, I came into a hatchet man role, and that's certainly not my wheelhouse, where I had to fire 175 people. I fired each group or each person myself. And with the exception of one person, 174 understood exactly why I was doing it. One just decided not to like me, and that's fine. I don't really care about that. But the point is, they all left understanding why we had to do this, because it was bigger than us. We were doing the right thing for the business. And I carry that lesson forward, because all of those people are connected with me on LinkedIn today and comment on my stuff and don't have a bad feeling about something. I took their livelihood away, and it killed me, but I had to do it for the right reasons. And that's what I mean by you can still be kind and be tough. You just don't have to be an ass. Or you just don't have to be. There's, unless someone steals from you, then, the bad Alan shows up with the get the hell out of my office kind of deal. But unless you've done something egregious, it's just performance. You're a human. Let's treat you like a human on the way out too. Because here's the lesson that most leaders miss. It's not the people on the way out that really matters, the people that are left.
Yes.
And we see that all the time. Big corporations fire people and treat them like crap. And then you're going, but then now the people left are thinking culture. What does that mean, culture? What could happen to me now? And then they start defending themselves and protecting themselves and doing all the things that people need to do to survive. So you create a survival instinct on how you treat people on the way out. And I think I see that almost every day. And it's a basic principle, right? People wouldn't do that. Yeah, they do. Because they don't think past their own nose sometimes.
I think that is so powerful. And I also see it all the time. And a story is triggered by that. I'll share in a second. But it's not just about the people that are exiting. I mean, every human being should be treated with dignity and respect. Even if they steal, I'm not going to degrade my own dignity and my respect for myself or those around me by treating another person, even if they had put bad intent, like they're going to be fired, all that stuff. But I'm not going to set a bad example for myself and hold myself to that standard. Even when people leave, but it's not about them, because it's about everybody else who's there. And that example that you're setting about how you care for others, even on their way out. I'm reminded of a story that someone once shared with me. They were at one of the big banks, and, they, went through a RIF, large, major corporation. They do that all the time. And so they were roughed out, and he and I were having a beer, a week or two later. And he goes, I was at the bank for 18 years. And the day you start that there's a revolver with a bullet with your name written on it somewhere, and it's just a matter of time. And that's what you live with all the time. And I remember thinking, what a awful way to live, knowing that sooner or later your number is going to come up. Because as a leader, I'm thinking there's no way I'm getting discretionary effort from that person, because they are committed to and believing in the cause. They're doing a job. It's an important job. They're fulfilling a transaction, but they're thinking about it transactionally, knowing that there's zero loyalty. And I just don't believe it has to be that way. And I don't care how big the company is, because it's not the CEO of that giant company. He may be a wonderful, caring human being, but it's the culture that cascaded down through the many, 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 many levels and established, here's how we treat people on the way out, so that the people who are here understand that they're cared for and loved. And it's easier in a smaller company, but it's also even more critical, because you just that you don't have anywhere to hide if you don't do it the right way.
What a great story, right? And it reminds me when I was at Icon in Quebec and the union was coming in. I'll just give you a quick story that reflects that. When I got there, we did an employee survey, right? And we were, on the meter at a 2 out of 10, like in terms of place to work, right? We're 130 odd employees. And so I made my, my speech and told people and did the town halls and what I learned was all people really want is your honesty and integrity. So when I did the breakfast with the boss stuff, which is not new, I went around the 8 or 9 offices and I talked to people and I listened and they gave me ideas. And then I got back to them. I said, this is what we're doing and this is what we're not doing and this is why we're not doing it. So everybody had a voice. And what happened at the end, when I left 2 years later, we were at an 8 out of 10. And all it was, the only changes were, I'm going to listen to you. I'm not going to lie to you. If something's bad and it's affecting you, you're going to know about it. So there's no uncertainty. And you're going to know where we're trying to take this business, that we have to recover the $9 million in losses. And there's only one way to do that. It's through people or more business and cutting costs. That's it. You guys know that. So we explained that we started to be more transparent about the numbers and we show the numbers every month. And then people started to recognize we can be part of this. It's not just corporate doing this to us. We are responsible for it. And, it taught me so many lessons about just integrity matters, honesty matters, and, living through and you hire the right people and fire those that are not part of it. And that's what we had to do to turn that business around.
I've done this myself. We're doing an employee opinion survey and I always advise folks, don't do it if you're not willing to answer the questions that are being raised, the issues that are being raised very outwardly. And I say, hey, I heard you. Here's what we're doing. To your point, here's what we're not going to do. I always used to tell folks, hey, look, when I would do skip levels or town halls or, whatever it was, I'd say, look, here's what you need to know. I absolutely promise to listen. I'm deeply interested in what you have to say, but I commit to you that I will not tell you what you want to hear. I will tell you the truth and I will tell you what I believe based on what I know. But I'm not going to just play smoke and mirrors and tell you what you want to hear. If I disagree or if I have an opinion or information that changes, what you need to know, I'm going to share that. But I'm just going to do it with a lot of, honor, dignity, integrity, and love, because you deserve that as a human being. And, I always got so frustrated when I would be at organizations or see organizations where there's all the perks for the C-suite and they're up elevated away from everybody and they don't talk they have the special parking and all these things. And it's like, man, at the end of the day, we're all people. We all put our britches on the same way and we all show up to do roles. And we need to have that honest, open, and integrity-driven dialogue. And I love the way you framed it. Like, I'm going to hear you, but I'm going to explain why. We'll do what we can, and we're going to tell you why we can't do those other things. That's so powerful. That integrity-based leadership is just so important.
Well, you nailed a couple of words there. Truly valuing people, not just checking a box on a sheet that said, "Oh, we did our time halls." Yeah, but what did you do, and how did you listen, and were you compassionate? Because most leaders are not great at follow through, are they? Right? They're good at maybe articulating a vision, or they're really smart. They're decent at managing, right? But managing is not leading, right? Leading is getting people to follow your vision and creating other leaders. I mean, it's a really simple concept, and being in the service of others. I mean, that's the game we're in as leaders. And it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur with 6 people or a company with 6,000. It's the same. It's harder with 6,000 for sure, but people will believe you if you have that authenticity and integrity, because they'll talk about you when you're not in the room, right? That's part of my work in leadership branding, is people will talk about you when you're not in the room. Make sure that the story is the story you want them to tell. That's, I think, the game that we're in.
That's so rich. Well, I want to go there because I want to spend a little bit, a significant amount of time on leadership branding and the power of that. You triggered 2 thoughts for me that I really want to get your thoughts on and perspective on. So the first one, I'm going to pose the question, give you a second to think about it, and while I kind of talk about the second one. So the first thing is, I'm very curious to how many people you've worked for, like you have been a direct report to, and how many of those were leaders. While you're thinking about that, I know my ratio is I work for 3 leaders out of the 11 individual humans that I have had a direct reporting relationship to. And I know I've only had 3 that I would qualify as leaders. So I'm very curious to get your thoughts on that. And then I do want to have a double click on this accountability conversation and commitments. And then I want to get into leadership branding. So I hope I gave you enough time to think about the leadership ratio. What is that for you?
You know, I've been fortunate that I've worked with some great leaders. And I've also had a few duds would be very kind. And when I say duds are integrity based, not because they were just not nice people. But I'm going to go back to this guy was the weirdest leader I've ever seen. He managed 25 sales reps. He was just, a kind, wonderful human being. Not a great manager, but boy, was he a good leader. And I'll give you a quick story. He came into one of our team meetings, and his name was Rene Cote, I think it was in Quebec. And he comes in, and I have goosebumps thinking about the story. And he goes, and this is the style, I am a millionaire. And he walked around the room. I am a millionaire. And $1 million was a lot in the 80s, right? So,
yeah.
And he'd go on and we're going, did something happen? Did he win the lottery? So we're all just sitting there with the anticipation. He didn't win $1 million. The whole message was about how you feel when you start your day with that feeling of it. And I'll never forget that. It was motivational, which doesn't last long, but he'd do that all the time. In one-on-one conversations, he'd pump you up, he'd get you excited, he would care, he would listen. And I never forgot how important that was because, we don't show up to work every day. Nobody does. Perfect. We had a lousy sleep, we had a fight with this, our dog didn't do, something happened. So if you get in a mindset, to use that word, where you can perform because you care, or you've now had a few laughs, he was brilliant at that. And I'll never forget that lesson about my responsibility when I interact with anybody is that it's a better conversation after than it was before. And that's the lesson I learned from Rene.
That is such a rich story. And it's so, the antithesis of Glengarry, Glenn Ross, ABC, which is, I love that video. It's a great clip, but it's the antithesis of that. All right. So before we leave this, if you were to put a ratio on it, what is the great leader to non-leader or leader to manager, whatever you want to call it, ratio for you?
If I had 10, 40% were good leaders and the others were not.
That's very consistent. My ratio is around 25% or a little less, and but I've talked to hundreds of leaders, and it's somewhere between 30 and 40%. And so I'm curious for you, why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons that it is. First of all, I don't think people are born leaders. I think there are people that are born with attributes that look like leadership, but I think you learn that. I happen to learn that through, a gift that my mother gave me, which was the gift to feel confident and to lead with my heart. And that wasn't intentional, but it's just a gift that she gave me. And then I think sports taught me a lot, Dusty. I think everybody who knows, if they've played any high-level sports, all the attributes of preparation and planning and working out for 6 months before you even see the field, like all those things, and getting up in the morning when no one's around and getting up at 5 o'clock to go do your weights and go do your running and no one sees that stuff. That's all, extrapolate that into the real world, right? So you start to think about those. So the other thing is, of course, how we pay people. How do we pay a CEO? Well, we pay a CEO on performance. Some of them don't care how they get there. They want the bonus. Okay, that's great. And the other one is they're there for 3 or 4 years and they're out. So what does that teach us? Well, you're going to get yours and you're going to get out. That's what it teaches people. So they don't get compensated for a happy company. But it doesn't always equate. As you know, Dusty, there are a lot of great companies in the context of performance that really have a crappy culture, but because they have great strategy, great distribution, great whatever. And to me, that's the problem. We haven't figured out that, business is a game. We're here for something bigger, I think. Human to human, whatever you want to word, spiritual, pick whatever thing you hang your hat on. But we invented work. So why not make it a happy place to be? Because in the old days, we just subsisted. We had to eat, We procreated, and that was the deal. We just tried to stay alive from not getting eaten by dinosaurs, if we were, whatever that combination of what dinosaurs showed up with. Well, you know what I mean? So maybe I'm a little off in my history, but you know what I mean. The point here, it is really a game that we better, if we're spending 40 hours, 50 hours, 60 hours a week there, let's make it as fun as it can be, because it can be really hard. So let's make it as easy as we can be, so people feel aligned with what they're doing every single day.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more vehemently. I think it's just so powerful when we as leaders really invest the time, effort, and energy into connecting the dots for those that we serve, so they can understand how their work connects to the purpose, the vision, and the plan of the organization. And then we can really connect meaning for them, so they understand what's in it for them. Like, what are their opportunities? What are their, how they measure personal success? I think that's not Absolutely. What people are natively taught. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think you've said this so eloquently, that people are born with the attributes of leadership that are mistaken for leadership, but leaders are made. They have to be trained. You have to learn, right? Harry S. Truman said, not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers. So all leaders are constantly refining and tuning, and whether it's reading or listening or, studying what others do. I think it's so, so important.
Let me ask you something. Are you leading off of instinct? I mean, you've got the vision, you've built the thing, but most leaders I talk to are still flying without a system. Vision to Victory, the mastermind, changes that. It's a 12-week experience where we install the leadership operating system you've always needed: purpose, strategy, cadence, metrics, execution. This isn't a course. It's not more content. It's a small group of leaders who are done chasing clarity and ready to lead with it. You'll walk out with a full leadership operating system, a trusted circle of peers, and a repeatable way to scale without losing yourself along the way. There are only 12 seats in this group, and most are already spoken for. It's an application-only process. Go to arcusgroup.com/mastermind to apply.
I want to close the loop on something you said a minute ago about accountability and commitments. And I have this thesis that as a society, or as businessmen, women, whatever it is, that we often think of accountability as something we do to people, and that we're going to hold people accountable. And I've had a number of mentors that have given me, helped me frame some thinking in this way. In fact, I was speaking last night at a YPO event as we record this, and we were talking about this very topic of, what is great leadership? What is accountability? And I'm really curious to kind of pressure test this thesis with you, because I don't believe that accountability is what we do to someone. I believe that accountability is the honoring of commitment, and it's a two-way coin. And so when someone else has committed to us, as a individual, as a human, as a leader, to do something, whether it's some task, some project, some initiative, some deadline, they have committed that they will execute what they're going to do. And I think this ties into what you said a minute ago about, many people aren't good at follow through. But the flip side of this, the other side of this commitment coin, is that we as leaders have committed that we will follow through if they don't. And so I used to have a rules of engagement guide that I would give all team members that I worked with. And one of my rules was, don't make me follow through. I absolutely will follow through with you, but please don't make me, because I'm asking you to honor your commitment. That's how I think about accountability and commitment and follow through. I'm really curious to just get your perspective on that. And then I want to switch us to the branding conversation.
So I concur 100% with what you've talked about. At the end of the day, our job is to teach them to be self-managing, right? That's our job. They have to know that if they've made a commitment to us, here's the risk though. If we follow up, and I'm the same with you, they know I'm following up. Like they're just not gonna happen. But we set a timeline. Like I had one today, and I said, listen, I'll call you this afternoon. If I don't, it'll be tomorrow morning. Here's what we'll talk about. But if I don't get it, and then what I emailed her this morning, hey, I won't have a chance to do that, so let's move it to Monday. So they're now knowing, okay, he's not just leaving it in the ether. He said he would call me, but he couldn't, so he followed up. So you have to model the behavior. If you're the one that said commitments, and I want you to do this, and you don't do it, that's not going to work. They're going, I got an out. So to me, commitment, to your point, not just a two-way street with what has to be done. It's a two-way street as you need to be the role model. And here's the other thing that I used to do. I can't remember where I learned it, but in the sales environment, just for performance, because commitments are performance, right? Whether it's I'm going to sell something or I'm going to do something, right? And I'll just remember with this young man, I said, okay, so here's our performance standards. Here's what we need. We have all agreed to. Here's what we're going to do. How would you like me to deal with you if we get to that place where you're not performing? Do you want me to kick you in the ass publicly? You want me to talk to you? You want me to be gentle? You want me to be rough? You want me to be, what do you want me to be? You know what it ultimately happened? People would walk in my office and go, I guess we're done, huh? I got to leave, right? Because I haven't matched up to the standards. They would fire themselves because it was together. We all agreed that's what we were doing. So firing was not a big deal for me because it was just, and the ones who didn't, well, that's a different conversation. They didn't see that they were in that mode. So that's what I look at commitment. I agree 1,000%, two-way street, be the role model. And then you end up with a performance culture, which is really now people are agreeing to goals, they hit them, and then you measure them on that. And nobody's having to manage their way out of that. But the old saying is inspect what you expect.
Yes.
That's something that is really hard to do, but boy, what a important management tenet. Follow that up, and they know, and then they'll feel accountable even when they're not there. So.
Man, I love that. Without having any conversation about this prior, we are very much singing out of the same hymnal, as they say, because that rules of engagement guide that I mentioned that I would draft, I would ask them to do the same, and it would communicate back to me how they wanted to be coached, how they wanted feedback. And that's what we were working on last night with our YPO group here. And it's like, this is why it's so important, because if we have an expectation in our head that it isn't communicated, the only person that's going to be frustrated in this is us, and it's our job to make sure that they have clarity on what we expect, and then that they can give us clarity back on what and it just removes friction and waste, and that's what prevents businesses from achieving great results. Okay, you said something in there which I think is just a perfect and beautiful segue into leadership and thinking about leadership and branding. You said, everything we do is leadership. We have to model the behavior we want, which, as I heard you say that, I went, well, that is leadership branding. Unpack for us, what is it that you think about and do when you work with leaders and help them elevate their thinking about leadership as a brand and what that means?
Let's start at the beginning. So everybody has a leadership brand. They're perceived a certain way, right? Good, bad, and ugly, right? Whether he or she's a strategist, he or she's a good manager, he or she's whatever. They say things about you. So the first question is it exactly what you want the world to know about you internally? And by the way, externally, right? Because leadership branding is not just an internal tenet. It's how you speak from your leadership voice, from what makes you as a leader. And so what we do is the first thing we do is assess where you are. How does the world see you, and how should the world see you? And not in a curated way. I want to be very clear. We don't curate leaders. We unveil. We help them uncover the best of them. So you're not going to ever turn me into an a-hole leader, excuse my language. I can't be that guy. But I'm going to lead with my heart, so my authenticity is there. So in everything I do, it's very clear that that's how he leads. The risk of that is he too nice? That's a risk, because when you're a heart leader, people will say, is he tough enough, right? That's all. So there's always an antithesis to everything you do. But when you start working with someone, or you start expressing your leadership, which is the work we help people do, they get to see the entirety of you. They get to see, so in my case, yes, I talk about personal branding and leadership. They know, based on my experience, I've had to go through some tough lessons and some tough things, and I've had to do tough things in my life, as most leaders have. You don't get away with it, right? So I had to be tough enough to execute on something that's important, but I always did it hopefully with heart and love. And so that's what my brand is all about. So when I'm out there, we help people unlock that and unlock their gifts, because every leader has an incredible gift, or 2 or 5, that they can share with others. So then people can see them and go, that is really cool. And then when they unlock that, your team loves it, your constituents love it, your bankers love it. And isn't it easier when you're out there and known? Like if you're known because you're out there on social media sharing perspectives, raising money is easier, M&A is easier, getting great staff is easier. You know, all of those things become easier because people go, that's the kind of company I want to work for. You've now humanized a business. So that's the macro of the work we do. I can get into the micro if you want to go deeper, but we help them unlock their leadership voice and help them express it out there, both internally and externally. That's what we do.
As you might imagine, you know, I love the unlocking part of it. That's kind of everything I think about is how do we unlock potential. It's the reason we named this podcast what we did. And you talk about unlocking their leadership voice. Let's go a little deeper on this. Like when someone says, hey, Alan, I want to take it to the next level. I want the things that you're talking about from an outcomes perspective. You know, they're easier to raise money, easier to hire employees, all of these things. But I don't know how to get there. I don't know the roadmap to making that happen. What is the first step that you recommend or that you bring to them based on your work? And I'm so curious about this because of something you said, and I just want to hear what your thoughts are on how you help them unlock that.
So I'll start with what we do at the company and then what they might be able to do on their own, and then what the risks are of both, right? So what we do at our company, the first step is what we call our leadership signal framework strategy session, which is a 90-minute meeting, a forensic interview where we uncover everything about them. And then 2 weeks later, after we've done some research and work, we would come back and present to them, here's how we see you. Because we don't know them, right? Initially, here's how we see you. What is our perception of you? And here's what we see in terms of your leadership voice. And the word signal matters as well. What signal are you leading with? Are you leading with your heart? Are you leading with your head? Are you leading with strategy? Are you leading with perspectives? What is that signal? What is that energy you're giving off? Because there's a congruency between, or sometimes a non-congruency between what they say and how they act. What we're looking for is that stream of consciousness that says, here's the energy you put out when you're there. Do you make your employees fearful when you walk in the cafeteria, and do they move aside or go, oh, well, there's the CEO? Or do they feel warm and welcoming when you come in the room? We find that authenticity and we say, okay, that's who you are. Now, how do we now prepare you to develop content that reflects who you are? So step one is strategy and unlocking that. Step two is how is content reflected in that? And then the loop that closes is what engagement do you do online and off to make sure that consistency is there so that when you see Alan on his LinkedIn, you go, yeah, that's the guy I met for coffee. He's teaching me about personal branding and leadership branding, but that's the same guy. It's just like we just had a coffee together. And let me share one little story that's really important. We recommend video for obvious reasons. It terrifies people, by the way, to do video, but we recommend it because there's a transformation that happens, and we just discovered these words yesterday to go from fog to fire. I love that word. So people have fog when they start, they go to fire. And so what happens is they start out and go, well, I have a lot to say, but I don't want to do it on video because I'm feeling authenticity is going to be tough and being comfortable, whatever. Here's why we do video, because isn't this authentic? You don't like me or you're not, but you're going to know it's Alan. And if we met offside, you know, that's Alan, that's great. And now I've just cloned myself. My video's out there forever. It's on my YouTube channel. It's out there forever. So I might see 10,000 people, 100,000 people, or 1 million people might see this video, and maybe not. But if I do 100 videos in a year, pretty obvious that someone's going to see my content. And now that they're spending time with me, they make a decision on me before they ever contact me. Studies have shown, I think it's something like 5 or 6 or 7 hours. When they spend time with you online, they think they know you. The first time I meet people online, they know me. I don't know them. What a great advantage. They already trust me. There's no competition anymore. It's gone because they're going, I made a decision to work with you. If we could figure out the financial stuff and it works, great. So that's the work we do. It's phenomenal, Dusty, I have to tell you. I mean, it's work we do, so I'm really biased. But I'm telling you, when you're out there, we use it. You are building trust at scale. There's no other way to do that. No other way. Can't do that with marketing, right? Because companies aren't trusted. And if you do your videos and it's all about selling stuff, they're not going to trust you. But if you teach them the same way you do servant leadership is not about you. Leadership branding is not about you either. It's about others. It's about giving gifts to others. And one of your questions I remember in the prep was, what are the gifts you want to give to people? That's the gifts you give every single day. So, sorry, long way to get there, but I'm very passionate about it, as you could tell.
I could just listen to you talk about this for another hour. And something you just said there that I think is worth repeating is, and I say this in every single symposium I do, every event I speak at, every chance I get, leadership's not about you. Leadership's not about you. Leadership's not about you. And what you just said as well is like the branding aspect of it is not about you either. And, it's like marketing, we always think about, well, this company trying to sell things. Well, no, great marketing is about helping you awaken a desire for something, a transformation that you can only receive by buying this product or this thing or whatever it is. Leadership branding isn't about you. And that's a judo move, a paradigm shift there, because you have to think about it. You think about, well, I'm talking about myself. And, honestly, I struggled with that as I started this firm and this venture, because I'm like, I don't want it to be about me. Like, that's my entire body of work has never been about me. It's always been about serving others. And then I went, okay, I just need to brand in a manner that conveys very directly, it's not about me. It's about the person we serve and how they are in their journey. I love the way you've typified that. And that from fog to fire is brilliant.
The interesting thing is you're doing that now, Dusty. So with the podcast, So podcast is leadership branding, right? It is that. So what we recommend to people is that is one medium. So the other channels are speaking gigs and obviously going on other people's podcasts, which is part of my strategy, is to go on as many podcasts that have a relevant audience as I can, because podcast guesting is a strategy, right? And then what we encourage and all of our leaders that we work with do is now to be active on the social channels that connect to your audience. So mostly LinkedIn is a starting point, depending on if it's a B2B play, and most of our clients are in the B2B space because they're leading. So we encourage them and we work with them and have a do-it-for-you model that, because CEOs are busy. So we help them transform through the whole exercise of strategy right through to our do-it-for-you model, which we call Stratus Signature 360, which is a 360 on we'll do everything for you. So you're now out there authentically. It's only you. You are out there, right? Dr. Seuss said that, only you are you. So you are out there. And the reason we could be your back office is because you're the face. We're not writing content, trying to become your voice. No, you're doing a video. We're writing about your video. That's different. And that over time builds trust, as we talked about at scale. And that's the magic that creates, and the transformation that happens is people learn how to tell stories in 90 seconds to 2 minutes. That's magic. When you can do that, that helps you in all aspects of your life.
It's absolutely magic. And, people buy from, do business with, engage with, all the other verbs you can think about with people that they like and trust. I mean, it's as simple as that. And I love the way you're bringing this to the world. How does a person who's listening to this, who's maybe not in a CEO seat, or, they're not in that position where they can go out and engage with you and to do this work, what is the workflow or recommendation you would give for someone who says, I buy this, I understand it, but I need to be able to do it myself for where I am today? How do they do that?
So a couple of things. Go to my LinkedIn and download the personal branding worksheet. It's free, and go do that and fill that out. That's your first step. Even for CEOs that want to kind of figure out, where they're going, this might be a great first step because it asks you questions you don't ask yourself, right? So that's step one. Step two is, if you want to follow us, you will learn about this stuff. So if you're a student and because I had to talk to YNGers, the young YPO kids of YPOers, and there were 50 of them in a room in New York back in the spring. What was really interesting is they couldn't answer the questions like, tell me what you're known for, because they were 22.
Yes.
So they didn't have stuff to be known for yet, but I uncovered with them, I said, let me explain what that is. So they actually have stuff they're known for, they just never connected the dots. But the point was, as you build out your career, These are the things you need to work on and capture so that you have a fulsome story as you get to, not my age, but maybe in your 30s or 40s when you're in YPO category. You will now be more intentional about what you're communicating with the world so that it opens up more opportunities. Because here's the thing that people miss a lot. Opportunities are sitting out there on digital right now. Right now, there are opportunities for you, Dusty, right now. You will never see them. You'll never see them because they don't know you're there. So the opportunity exists. You can't find it because you're not there. So it's like my business partner, Leanne, often says, it's like going to a networking event and facing the wall. Digital is where we are. If you're not there, by the way, your next customer, that's all they know.
Yes.
They expect transparency. They expect visibility. And if you say, I'm going to hide behind my logo, fat chance you're going to be the one they're doing the business with. They're going to go with that heart-centered leader who's out there and sharing the best of them, because then you'll say, that's a company I want to work for. So those are all the reasons why you do it. And once people get out there and get over their fears, they're unstoppable on the other side of it. Follow us, do the branding worksheet, and then use ChatGPT. It'll give you the why and the how, and just monitor yourself. And then start by playing around on LinkedIn. Go and comment on other people's stuff. Very powerful. Don't have to post content yet. Go follow leaders like Dusty and Alan and go, hey, that was really cool. And say something intelligent, not just great video. I learned this from that. Now you're starting to build a relationship.
And not a ChatGPT auto comment, but a real thought-provoking, hey, I actually got from this, and here's what I learned, or here's why I'm challenged by this. You know, like that constructive discourse is so powerful.
Yeah, ChatGPT is a great tool to help you think.
Yes.
Don't make it who you are. I mean, we use it all the time to help us think about things, and we kind of go like fog to fire. That came from a conversation with chat. But we had to input it, and then that came out. That's brilliant. We would have never come up with that on our own. We would have to pay somebody $1 million to come up with that. But that came up yesterday. Now it's part of what we do. So it's perfect.
I think of it as a forcing function for being a force multiplier, because it allows me to just volley. And then, I hadn't thought about that. It gives you another angle. So it just becomes a force multiplier for thinking. As you were talking about these YNGers, you said something I love, and I advocate folks to think about this all the time, is when they're connecting the dots, right? You're 22, 23 years old. You're going to have these keystone moments that are going to happen throughout your life and your career. You may not even recognize them as a keystone. And when I think about a keystone, it's where the strength of the arch is locked into place because the keystone has dropped in, and it's part of our brand and logo, because I believe so firmly that leadership is a keystone for building enduring success. And if you think about these moments and you capture these moments and you go, here is what happened, here's what I learned, and now how can I cast these learnings into the stories that matter for others? Because I've had this experience, this keystone moment happen, and maybe you don't see them until they're several years behind, because at the time it feels like this traumatic event. But then once you get past that and you go, wow, in that moment, I was being formed and shaped. A keystone was dropping in that would give me strength to persevere. Don't let that be just thing that's locked away only in your life, but take the story, share the story, cast it out there so that others can learn from it. And so you could reinforce your own learning from this thing. So I love that you're sharing that with folks at that age. I wish I'd had that wisdom given to me when I was 22 or 23. I think I would have been much more intentional about relishing the moments when they were happening and then capturing those lessons, as opposed to doing it now and going back and going, actually, that was a lesson 30 years ago, but now I recognize it for what it was. I just think it's so powerful to connect the dots. I don't think there's anything more powerful than that.
So here's the part that a lot of folks miss. What you just shared is what we're talking about. You're sharing now going forward. You may not mention names, but the lessons that you learned, those forged in stone, you never think about them that way, to your point, at the time. But, you made me start to think back when I was looking at some of the prep questions going, we could talk for 4 hours because it's a long career.
But,
and going, okay, at that point, that happened. And that taught me this. And that scared the crap out of me. I remember I was on my bed going, oh, what did I just do? Like, there are moments that we all have in our lives, seminal moments that we all have in our lives that shape us. But wouldn't it be great if you can share that with a group today by being out there on video and saying, you know, I had one of those moments too. You're not alone. And people go, that's why he or she became such a great leader, because they got punched in the face 1,000 times. Yeah, I did. I got punched in the face. As all leaders, nobody gets away with it. No. Everybody looks great on the outside, but they're bruised to crap on the inside, because that is what it is. So you learn. Those lessons teach you how to turn the page, because you have to in business. Turn the page, lessons, implement the lessons, go forward. That's what good leaders do all the time. The ones who make the same mistakes, they're not really good leaders, right? Because they just keep making the same mistakes. I know I've made the same mistake a couple of times, but I won't make it a third time, for sure.
Yeah, it could not agree with you more. It's so interesting. You know, when we were starting out today, you mentioned, hey, leadership is lonely, right? And sales is lonely, leadership is lonely. And it is. And it's one of the most common pain points that I see and hear from working with leaders. And, you know, whether I'm doing it now or over my career is, you know, it's really these three big common pain points. Loneliness, isolation is one. Yeah. Frustration that there's a gap between the vision and the plan and the results that are being delivered. And then the third pain point I just hear over and over again is the bottleneck. Like, it all ends up on me. Why am I being the one that's crushed under all the pressure? Why does it all end up on my plate? Yeah. And there's a million reasons for these things, right? You can each situation is different, but it always comes back to, you know, have we created clarity? Have we built alignment? And then have we enabled organizations and people within these organizations to execute clearly against the plan and against the mission, the vision that we've created? This isolation component, like you and I are blessed and have been members of YPO for a number of years and had forum experiences and been a part of a forum where you aren't just patted on the back and said, oh, that's nice, good job. In fact, you know, I can't speak for you, but I can speak for myself. It is the cross-checking that we get that is sometimes is the single most valuable. And they also create keystone moments where people go, hey, Dusty, I think you're buying into your own BS, and I'm going to call you out on it. My forum has done that for me multiple times, and I'm sure you have as well.
100%.
It's just so powerful when you surround yourself with other like-minded leaders. It's part of the reason we're doing the work we do is to give people access to, because you and I have access to YPO Forum. Not everybody does, but give people access to that committed group of like-minded people who will sharpen them. Iron sharpens iron, and it's just so powerful. Alan, we could talk for another 4 hours. In fact, we're going to have to do it again really, really soon. I'm going to pivot us just to make sure that, you know, my audience doesn't go, oh my God, this is like too many masterclasses rolled into one. I'd love to have you back. I want to continue this dialogue on some more specific leadership things, because I think there's so much wisdom that you can share. But I'm going to pivot us to some rapid fire questions, because I really want to get your thoughts on these. Some of these I gave you in the pre-work, some I did not. So fair warning. But I really want to just get close this out with some really strong wisdom for our audience. Sure. First off, what is a book that you believe every leader should read?
I even have it in my library. It's called Principle-Centered Leadership from Stephen Covey. It's an oldie,
Amen, brother.
A goodie. I'm a big fan of Stephen Covey. He's the guy that also wrote 7 Habits, as you know, of highly effective. Those two books together are 1 and 1A for me. There's a million of other great ones, but that's one that I live my life by.
I love that. Yeah, those are solid. I would say Franklin, or the 7 Habits, Franklin Covey Planner was my first introduction to, you know, a system of thinking, you know, a self-leadership operating system, as it were, that allowed me to learn. Okay, what is the single best piece of leadership advice that you've ever been given?
Well, it's not new, but it's hire slow and fire fast.
Amen.
That's because at the end of the day, you know, you can't do it alone. So you got to have a great team that you can rely on and trust to do the work. If you're truly the leader, you're not doing the work in the way that, you know, if you're an entrepreneur, it's different, obviously. But if you're truly a CEO, you're the band leader. And so you better have really good people. And when they show themselves as the wrong people, you know you can't save them, time to move on.
It's easy to say, and it's sometimes hard to do. And I think oftentimes the teams and leaders I've worked with, they confuse intent with results. And so they have such good intent, but that's not what they were hired to do. They weren't hired to have great intentions. They were hired to deliver great results. And, we've got to hire great people. Okay. I'm curious about this. What's a leadership lesson that you just had to learn the hard way? Like all the advice in the world was great, but you had to stub your own toe in order to figure it out.
Well, I'm a little embarrassed about it, but it's honest. Due diligence matters. My default is trust. It's how I'm built. I will trust you first until you screw me. But there are some moments that require a little more due diligence than trust. And so that's what I now carry forward. So it's, trust but verify, that old deal. That's how I'm now much more aware of people that need me and are trying to use me.
Some lessons just have to be learned the hard way because then they stick and they stick differently. What is a leadership myth that you would like to debunk?
That kindness is weakness. Simple, right? Because I've been out of a job for 2 months in my entire life. That's everything else. I've been lucky enough to be employed. And during that 2 months, I went to meet some PE firms, right? They were not people I could work for because all they cared about was a turnaround in 4 to 5 years, which means they wanted a ruthless, pain-in-the-butt leader that didn't care about anything except what was on the balance sheet and on the income statement. That's all they cared about. If it was a public company, obviously the shares. And so I couldn't do that. I could act that way and do the things, but I've learned that I can be kind and I can be nice and I can be tough when I need to be tough. So that's, I think, something I would love all leaders to start to realize, that you can be a good human being first and then use your authority when you need to use your authority and execute in your role when you need to execute in your role. That's, to me, the simplest way to think about it. Not easy to do by any stretch, but I think if you have that as a principal bedrock, then you have a chance to be successful at it.
That's so cool, and could not agree with you more. Okay, last of these questions. I've actually asked this question in job interviews. It was my favorite job interview question. How do you personally define success? At the end of the day, when you go home, you shut it down, you lay your head down at night. How will you know that today was a good day?
That every interaction I had with somebody else was better than I found it. We just renewed our mortgage the other day, and the guy was happy that we were having the conversation because it was pleasant. And I think that, we all make deposits in the world to hopefully be better humans at the end of the day. Like, business is the game, but when you go to a grocery store, treat people with respect and love. These people are not making a lot of money. They have tough days. They meet hundreds of people. To me, it's always about being kind is easy. And boy, is it fun, because people love to be treated well. And so to me, that's the other trappings, money and accolades and all that other stuff. They don't last. The reality is, when they put you in a box, when you're 90 years old, what are people saying about you? It comes back to my leadership branding. You as a human are going to make impacts with people. Leave it better than you found it. That's what I look at. Leave it better than you found it.
Yeah, Rick Warren once famously said in a sermon, he'd never seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul full of cash to the gravesite.
100%.
It just doesn't happen. Alan, this has been such a joy and a privilege. I just soak up what you're sharing, and I'm so grateful that you've invested this time for our audience. If our folks want to follow you, learn more, download the guides, what are the best ways that they can do that?
I think the best way is just go to LinkedIn and type in Alan McLaren, my name, and you'll be there. And please mention that you heard me on Dusty's podcast. So you're not trying to sell me something, because I get a lot of that, as we all do. Sometimes people use LinkedIn as a sales tool. Do that and then connect with me there. Happy to help with any questions if you want to book a 30-minute meeting or stuff. But download the guide there, connect with me there, and just follow the content. And when you're ready to chat, you just DM me and we can go from there.
Awesome. Alan, thank you. What an investment of your time and life energy, and planting these seeds for me and for the rest of the world is so incredibly powerful. And I'm deeply, deeply grateful for your investment today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dusty. It was an honor to be with you, my friend.
If today's episode gave you something to think about, something to apply, then there's more where that came from. Head over to arcusgroup.com and sign up for our newsletter. It's where we share tools, insights, and our leadership frameworks to help you lead with more clarity, more alignment, and more impact. No fluff, just what helps you lead better. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time on Leadership Unlocked.